Now, the final thing that we've got as far as the outside world is concerned is another theory by Porter. We've already talked about Porter's value chain. This one's called Porter's Five Forces. Now, PESTLE, or PEST rather, is all about things that affect an entire industry. If the law changes, every single accountancy training company in the UK changes in the same way, because we're all affected by the same legislation. Porter's Five Forces is much more specific. Different companies will be affected in different ways. Now, again, you don't need to worry too much about this at this point. You're going to see it a lot in paper P3 and in P5. But at this point, we just need to be aware of things. Porter says that there are 5 other threats to the organisation. And by a threat, all that he means is that something is going to come along which makes it harder for you to earn profits. It's not going to make it impossible, it's going to make it harder. First of all, new entrants. That means there are new companies who set up in your business. That is obviously a threat because they will take your customers. Now, what Porter talks about is he talks about barriers to entry. Barriers to entry are things which stop other businesses coming in. Now, for example, imagine that I wanted, again, this is in the UK, if I wanted to set up a radio station, you need a licence. You need a licence from the government. If you don't have a licence, you can't set up a radio station in the UK. That's a barrier to entry. So even if I wanted to set one up, I couldn't do. Another common barrier to entry is money. Imagine it's going to cost an awful lot of money to start up a company in a particular industry. Well, then again, that's a barrier to entry because it keeps other people out. What Porter is interested in is it easy for other people to come in or is it difficult for other people to come in? So a barrier to entry is anything which makes it harder for them to come in. The harder it is, the less we worry about that. Underneath that, the bargaining power of buyers. Now, what Porter is talking about there is he's talking about your ability to raise prices. If we have got powerful buyers, powerful customers, it means that we want to put our prices up and they won't let us. Now, a powerful customer, for example, would be a big customer. Imagine that I'm a farmer. I grow apples and every year I get my harvest of apples and I sell them all to one supermarket. Now, obviously, if I try and put my prices up, the chances are the supermarket will just say, no, we're not going to pay that. I've got a very powerful customer. So it limits what I can do. It means I'm probably not going to be able to put my sales prices up very much. So I can't increase my profits very easily. Similarly, the bargaining power of suppliers. It's your ability to resist cost increases. I am, again, a farmer, and one of the things that I do is I obviously have lots of farm equipment that runs on petrol. Oil companies come along and they put petrol prices up. What do? I have to pay them. What am I going to do? I'm not going to turn around to the oil company and say, I'm not going to pay that. Powerful suppliers will say, we are putting our prices up and you'll just have to pay them. Now, powerful customers and powerful suppliers then are very difficult if we get both of them. Powerful suppliers put the costs up and you can't do anything about it. Powerful customers stop you from putting your own prices up. So what kind of things make a difference? The biggest one in the exam is how large these are. If you are talking about an electricity company, it's going to be a large supplier, therefore the chances are they're very powerful. So look at their size. If they are very big and you're very small, basically they are powerful and you're not. Threat of substitutes. There is obviously a danger. There is obviously a danger that people don't buy our products. They go and buy somebody else's. Now, that is always a threat. What Porter is talking about here is how significant is it? Now, the 3 kinds that we tend to have: direct, indirect, and monetary. Now, the exam might ask you to give an example of these, or what he might also do is he might say, here is a substitute, what kind is it? Imagine, for example, that we manufacture butter. So we're a company that manufactures butter. A direct substitute is somebody else who manufactures butter. So I don't buy one brand, I buy a different brand. It's still butter. An indirect substitute is somebody who buys a product from a different industry, but to do the same thing. So instead of buying butter, they buy margarine, they buy olive oil, they do something else so that they don't need to buy butter at all. Now, obviously, if there are lots of indirect substitutes, that's a bigger threat to our business than if there's just lots of direct substitutes. Direct substitutes are bad. Lots of indirect substitutes is even worse, because I've now got to worry about all the other butter manufacturers, because I could lose sales to them, and I could also lose sales to all the margarine manufacturers. The more of these there are, the more I have to worry, the bigger the threat is. Monetary substitutes, that's where somebody could spend money on our product, or they might decide to spend it on something else. So imagine, for example, that we were talking about a manufacturer of televisions. Direct substitute, other manufacturers of televisions. So Sony, Panasonic, those are direct substitutes for each other. Monetary substitutes, I am not going to buy a television at all. I am going to buy something else. I'm going to buy a used car. So they're all the same amount of money, or I'm going to have a nice holiday, all the same amount of money. So a television manufacturer has to worry about other television manufacturers and other people in completely different industries. They have to worry about holiday companies. The idea is I can only spend the money once. If I spend it on a holiday, I don't spend it on a television. Now, all of us have been through this. We've done monetary substitution. You have thought to yourself, I want this and I want that, but I can't have both. I will decide which one I'm going to buy. And they're often completely different industries. The more of those you have, the bigger the threat. Now, you get a lot of monetary substitutes as you start looking at luxury products, because people don't need them, they want them. With things that people need, you don't tend to have monetary substitutes. People need them. There may be a lot of direct substitutes, but people have got to buy milk. They've got to buy bread. They've got to buy butter. They've got to buy basic things. So they're not going to be monetary substitutes. It's luxury stuff. That's where the monetary substitutes come in. And the final one we've got there, rivalry. Is there a lot of rivalry within our industry? If there is, it means that all of the companies are after the same customers. It makes it hard for us to grow. Look there for barriers to exit. Barriers to entry stop a company coming in. Barriers to exit stop a company leaving. They don't really want to carry on, but it's too expensive to shut down their factory and make everybody redundant. So Porter says these 5 things are threats. It's a question of whether they're a big threat or not. So in the exam, the examiner will probably give you a situation and say which one of these threats is it. So with all the stuff in chapter 10 and 11, the key thing is let's think about how it affects the company. How does it affect the company now? Is it going to mean that they need to save money? Is the economy getting worse? How is it going to affect them in the future? Are they going to be able to expand or not? So they're all big things, and as I say, we're going to look at them all again in paper P3.